There we go. Oh, and we have some more people in the waiting room. It's Greg Sorensen and Ray Harden and Sylvia Soderberg, all the best people.
Oh my goodness, all those people. Hello.
It's a full house, and Greg got out his fancy Christmas sweater with the cow.
Oh dear.
There's an upside down cow.
Is that from Traverse City?
JP Lee.
A big cow. All right. We are talking about our favorite Christmas carols today. Who wants to go? We have two carols in the room. Does one of you carols want to go first? Because you are our favorite carols.
Oh yeah, Genovese.
Carol Genovese, you're on. What's your favorite Christmas carol?
Well, I don't know that I have a favorite, but I see that probably later tonight in the bleak midwinter's going on. I like that.
Uh-huh.
But I like about all the Christmas carols. So if you need to take a vote, go for it.
We should take a poll. Maybe we'll do it at the end and see if we have a winner. So tell us about the bleak midwinter and what do you love most about it? Is it the tune or the text or the general ambiance? Do you have a sort of favorite memory of it? What makes you love that particular one?
I'm not sure. It's a combination of the music and the words, I guess. I know the feeling of bleak winter, but I also know the feeling of beautiful winter. So, but it's good to have a song for each mood.
Yeah. Well, I think that one in particular, to me at least, is the Christina Rossetti poetry, I think is such a vivid image, right? And it sort of sets that stage, you know. Of course, it's sort of one of the great ironies of Christmas is that all of us who live in these sort of more cold climes this time of year think of Christmas as coming in the winter, right? And so if you think of what it looked like in Palestine this time of year, it probably wouldn't be such a bleak midwinter, but that's, you know, that's one of the funny things about the connotations that we all have, that Christmas comes to such a dark time of year, and that kind of sets the stage of setting the frosty scenery and then the sort of arrival of Christ and all of that good stuff. Mary, so do you know the other tune? There's a tune by Harold Dark that we don't often sing, but that's often done as a choral arrangement. So that sort of can be interesting sometimes, just listen to a different tune and see if it sort of feels like a different thing from that point of view. All right, Carol Kemp, you had a question or something?
Yes, I just, when you switched to I thought of my two favorites, so.
All right, tell us about your two favorites.
Oh, come all ye faithful and joy to the world.
All right, you are an upbeat caroler. None of those bleak.
I think it's because, well, first I sang them as a little kid, and then I sang them in the chorus in high school and public school. And it's just, you know, I know that when we start the Christmas Eve service and we're singing, oh, come all ye faithful or whatever, that I know my friends in California and all over are singing the same song at the same time on Christmas Eve. And it just feels great.
Feels like a universal call to worship kind of.
Yeah, and then the joy to the world, it's the one time kind of experience that and then remember it all year. I don't know.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah, absolutely. Some happy, joyful carols. Ray, what's yours?
I'm thinking.
Oh, he's still thinking. He's still debating. Sylvia, do yours all picked out?
Well, the first thing that came to my mind was Once in Royal David City. I love that. And I love it as a processional. And I think the reason I love it, I don't know, I love it because it's beautiful. But also that we always listen every year to the King's College Choir doing their Christmas Eve service. And they always process with that. And it's just beyond ethereally beautiful. I just love it.
Aren't there several tunes to that?
Once in
I
Royal
don't know
David.
any other one.
I just know the one, yeah. But I mean, it stands to reason that there would be others possibly.
But they sing it more slowly. I think of a processional as being relatively not slow, but certainly stately.
Mhm.
And so, so many choirs now sing it faster.
Uh-huh.
One of the reasons I like that one is that it is this, I don't know, I can just see them all processing,
It's
you
a
know,
slow and stately procession.
well, not so slow, but just measured. Yeah.
Yeah. Here we are. Yes, that's one of the benefits, I guess, of our virtual service coming up this year is I had occasion to sit and type in on screen all those words for the sing-along carols, right? And so that meant that I sometimes noticed, because Once in Royal David City is a good example of one that I guess I haven't sung myself so much that I've really sort of memorized. Some of them I feel like I know the words inside out because I've just done them so many times, and I guess must have had occasion to sing them in my formative years. But Once in Royal David City is so it's an interesting how it kind of progresses, and it ends with that whole "our eyes at last shall see him," so you kind of get the whole span of it, right? Because it ends with a whole, past the resurrection and, second coming and all the way to everybody standing around in white in heaven, which might also be part of the affecting thing, right?
It is the whole thing, isn't it?
If you picture all these choir members in white all standing around. So I think it's all of those things kind of working together. And then, the solo treble, just, that whole one voice starting all by herself, and then the candles lighting, the people all starting to sing along, all of those things, I think.
It's magic. It's just my whole Christmas Eve. But I wanted to tell you your favorite one being I still have to be careful with this, in the bleak midwinter. A very funny thing happened in one of the choirs I sang in my singing days. And this young man was soloing on the first verse, and he boldly said, "In the meek winter." I've never been able to, I have to think about it every time I say that.
It's an image.
Well, they say the meek shall inherit, right? So
That's funny. So
The meek winter. I don't know why. I think it was because we had laughed about that before, how choirs are. Choirs can be very irreverent up in the loft.
Oh, yeah.
And indeed we had been. So maybe that's why he did that. And it was our fault, not his.
all right, Greg is back. We'll better get him while we have him on screen. Greg, what's your favorite Christmas carol? Or maybe we don't have him.
I don't,
he's muted, but he's
No,
he's
not
Can you
there.
hear me?
Now we can hear you. Yes.
Boy, there's such bad internet out there. I don't think you can hear me.
Earth to Greg, come in, Greg.
Good. Can you hear me?
We can.
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, good. Okay. I can't hear any of you. It's such bad internet now. But my favorite carol is "It Came Upon a Midnight
Oh,
Clear." It was written by a minister in Sudbury, Massachusetts. And he was an interesting guy. He suffered from terrible depression, and he was truly Unitarian because he had this open theology in which he wrote a carol where Jesus is not in the carol at all, but it's Christmas. So it's an interesting concept. Anyway, it's one of my favorite carols. There's an American version and there's an English version, a British version. And the text is inspired by the minister who was very moved by, there was war in Europe. America had been at war with Mexico. The Civil War was looming. And he wrote a carol that really embodied hope, but also his a little depressing at times, a little blue, but I kind of like it.
What's the difference between the two versions?
Oh, the difference is, well, the version we know is the text is the same. The version we know is "It came upon a midnight clear." That's what we know. But the English version is "It came upon a midnight clear, that glorious song of old," which is
Really?
completely different. It's kind of interesting.
I thought you meant a different version of text. It's a different tune. Then. Okay.
Now
Yeah.
the text is the same.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I never thought about the fact that it doesn't mention Jesus by name. That's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, it is a very good point that, you usually sing that carol and it's Christmas. And so you don't really stop to think, because in that context, it's sort of, you take it as a given thing, right? But Greg is right. It sort of talks about the midnight and the angels singing and all the war. And, that the generations for 2,000 years have done wrong in fighting. And it's just a sort of this wish for peace, but because it uses all that goodwill to men and all that phraseology. So when you sing it on Christmas, it's just sort of implied, well, of course that's what's going on. But I think Greg is absolutely right. If you just read it kind of at face value, whatever you want to call it, then there isn't.
I just thought that would be a good description of King's Chapel, implied Christianity.
There we are. Mary, did you have one?
Yes, I apologize. I'm at my daughter's new home and I had a workman here, and so I had to miss some of that. I got a couple of people's choices, so I may be repeating, and for that I apologize. Most of my favorites, and I think I have three. I love them all, but I think I have three. Have to do with memories, childhood memories, and memories of family and bygone Christmases. So the first is "What Child Is This?" because I fondly remember my mother playing the piano, and we sang along with that. And I love everything about Greensleeves. I love the key changes. I love the lyric. I love all of it. And the next one would be "Good King Wenceslas," which I always loved to sing with my sister, and we'd switch off the verses. And there's just something, I don't know, I could almost get a mental picture of that. And the third would be "We Three Kings of Orient Are." I get another mental picture of that, and we would sing it together. We'd switch, each person would have a verse. So it's all to do with childhood and family memories.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think we've talked about that in the past, that usually, at least that's always my experience. The, favorite pieces of music for me are almost always, tied to a particular memory. And often, as I was saying earlier, formative years, right? That you remember
Yeah.
something that was just really sort of seminal,
Yeah.
maybe in either in your childhood or in your musical life, right? That
Yeah.
you remember a piece like when Sylvia told us about the Serenade to Music, that you have this, it brings back a certain time in your life right there, and you just immediately are taken back there, and it's just a sort of musical nostalgia. And it's like, sometimes people talk about that a certain scent will, maybe the scent of pine needles will send you back.
Well, it's very Proustian. These are the autonomic things that happen. We don't have control over them, and
Exactly.
they just take you back for a brief moment in time, which is a wonderful bridge to the past.
I think
I
that's
think it's
Yeah,
great.
memories you didn't even know you had come
Exactly.
up. That's a strange thing.
Yes. Or a feeling, you just get a feeling of, maybe being there, or that there's something kind of wafting by you. It's amazing.
Yeah. And so speaking of, what Greg was saying earlier about there not really being any Christmas in, it came upon the Midnight Clear, at least not explicit Christmas. Martha, you mentioned this morning that your favorite is "Christmas Time Is Here," Charlie Brown. And I know lots and lots of people love that song. And
Oh,
because
now I won't get it out of my head all week.
I didn't grow up hearing it around Christmas, so it's always it strikes me as a very wistful song. So that's a little bit like In the Bleak Midwinter, that maybe it's that combination of the, you see those kind of maybe slightly droopy looking peanut kids standing around the sad Charlie Brown Christmas tree, but then there's this glimmer of hope that with the favorite time of year. Do you want
So
to?
it doesn't mention Jesus either, but I was just reading the words and I realized I hadn't really paid that much attention to the words before, but the words are very upbeat actually, and very nice.
It's a funny kind of disconnect, right? Because that's another one I feel like, because you often hear it like an instrumental, like, a background kind of thing. If you're out, I don't know, drinking eggnog somewhere or whatever, you might hear the instrumental version in the background. It's a little bit of a wistful song, but as you say, the words are the favorite time of year, and, songs by the fireside and all that good stuff.
I think it's one of the blessings of COVID that we are able to have a conversation like this. Usually we're busy running around and doing concertizing and out and meeting friends and all the rest. But I try to look for a silver thread somewhere, and
Absolutely.
it's wonderful that there have been conversations like this and that we can stop, take a breath, and think about what we're singing and what means most to us and why. So thank you for having this conversation.
Exactly. Thank you, Mary. So Ray, you're still paging through yours?
Well, I'm thinking most of mine, I don't have a favorite, but like some of you, mine are related to memories.
Mhm.
And the one I can't think of, I'm looking in the hymnal 1940 right now. Da 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 da. Here between oxen, whatever.
Oh,
And I can't think. The reason I go to that is my youngest brother Gary, who died a few years ago, several years ago. That was his absolute favorite, to the point that we actually had it played at his memorial service. And so that has a very special memory for me. In the Bleak Midwinter, I learned that in my 8th grade music class. My music teacher, Mrs. Summers, was quite an Anglophile, and so she taught us that the Holtz version of that. And so those two in particular have special memories for me. But Christmas doesn't seem like Christmas without "O Come All Ye Faithful." There's something about that. That's the other processional tune besides Royal David City, which I also really like. But there's something about those two tunes. When I listen to the Cambridge service and hear the treble solo on that, or in general when I hear "O Come All Ye Faithful," and especially the verse in Latin, it is Christmas.
Yeah.
Orally speaking. So
yeah.
there you are.
But it's also, I guess because, doing church music for work, for me, sort of tying into Martha's favorite Christmas time is here, all of those secular carols, or carols that have more about the time of year or everything. There's some or more about Santa Claus or whatever they're about. Sometimes, I guess for me, that's more of the party music, right? Whereas as we do all of the very sort of Christian carols.
I found the carol that my brother liked. It doesn't have a name. It just says the tune is Gewährt, and it's a 13th century French melody.
Uh-huh.
Here betwixt ass and oxen mild, sleep, 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 my little child. Angels from on high hover in the sky, keeping watch above the incarnate God of love.
Mm-hmm.
Not Unitarian, but very touching.
Was that a standard in your church at home in Arkansas?
No, it's my fairly early exposure to the Episcopal liturgy. My older brother sang along with Ed Bice's father, remember, sang at the Episcopal Cathedral, and I would be dragged along as the willing guinea pig to learn more about it. And that's probably the first time I had my liturgical experience expanded. And then after that, he dragged me to the temple where he was also singing. So those two traditions were introduced to me fairly early, and both took. But that was a standard there. Yeah.
There we are. Well, I brought, I felt I had to bring something exotic to the table, right? So, and speaking of childhood and all those things, I found a little bit of a snippet. Also, I happened to find this very, very beautiful choral arrangement of a particular Danish carol. Let's see if you can hear any of this. I'll just play a few seconds of it for you. There we go. And of course it has 8 or 10 verses because that's how we roll in Denmark. All the Christmas songs have many, many, many verses, but that's the first verse. And the reason I have such fond feelings for that carol is that my grandmother, whenever we would have our family Christmas, so when I was a kid, it was always, for some reason, we always had Christmas Eve with my mother's side of the family. It was never even discussed that you could alternate. I never understood how these poor children that would have, every other Christmas with the other family. How can you keep on changing it up? So we always, when we were all kids, had Christmas with my mother's mother and father and that whole side of the family. And that was Christmas Eve. And then you could see the other sides of various families and all the other. There are lots of holidays around Christmas in Denmark. So there's time to see everybody. Anyway, that was always my grandmother's request, that particular carol. And I don't really know why she loved it so much. And it's, as you could hear, it's a very simple little tune. And the text is sort of a variation of Lo How a Rose. So it's all about this. And a little bit like the bleak midwinter, that this idea of the rose bursting out. And like the Christ child coming in the bleak midwinter, that kind of idea with the prophecy of Isaiah, and that there are several carols all about roses, right? Spotless rose, howls, and of course there is no rose that we're doing a variation on for Christmas this year. So that is. I just it always brings me back, and also kind of the whole, I sort of often think of one of the aspect of how I ever got into being a music director is kind of when I was a kid, my cousin and I, on those Christmas Eves, we would put on a little Christmas show with our recorders and xylophones or whatever we had, and we would do a little musical thing before the unwrapping of presents. And so it sort of just takes me back to all of those things a long, long time ago.
Did you celebrate Christmas on Christmas Eve?
Yeah, so everything is all about Christmas Eve, although again, that I would say is something that has changed over the years because of all the multiple families, right? So now lots of people really have this elaborate Christmas construct. Like for the last several years, whenever I talk to my mother, because of course my grandparents are now gone, and so with all the various families and the kids, so now everybody is forever alternating. So I never know what my mother is doing in any given year. So I always have to check in with her. So where are you having Christmas this year? Because they sort of circulate through the whole family of children, grandchildren, and cousins, and so it seems nowadays it's a different scenario for every year. But again, the nice thing is that there are multiple holidays, so you can catch some people on the 23rd and then Christmas Eve, but usually the main unwrapping of Christmas presents is on Christmas Eve.
And do you speak Danish?
I certainly do.
Okay.
All right. And any other fun carols come to mind? Carol Kemp?
Well, if it wasn't in church with "O Come All You Faithful," it would be a relative Christmas party at my aunt's house. And it's the Perry Como record and the Burl Ives singing Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. I hear it in CVS, those old records still, the minute Thanksgiving's over with, it's Perry Como. I'm like, he lives forever, just like Frank Sinatra. I mean, it's unbelievable.
Oh,
I have to say, all my favorite recordings that I play outside of the carols, in the Minster and, St. Martin's and all the rest of it. The favorite ones I have are Rosemary Clooney, Bing Crosby,
Bing Crosby.
even Frank Sinatra, and I have one that I just love, from 1945. It's just wonderful. And it's all the old singers, who just did a beautiful job with whatever it was they sang. Very nostalgic.
What are you
They're so
showing us?
popular now.
What is that?
Helen Merrill.
One of my favorite singers. She was a famous chanteuse, and she came back out of retirement and made this recording. And she is amazing. She didn't have the big career like Ella Fitzgerald and other people, but she is just incredible. And the recording Heinrich and I have come to love in the last 10 years is this one.
What is it?
Sarah McLachlan.
Oh, yes. Oh.
And you are showing us 33 1/3 vinyl records, right?
No, these are CDs.
Oh, it looks
Yeah.
big on my screen. It looks like you're holding up a
It
big.
does, because I've been putting it up close, but it's.
Oh, I see. Okay, thanks. Sorry.
Is she Nova Scotian? Sarah McLachlan?
I don't know where she's from. She might be Canadian. She's just a pop star, right, Heinrich?
That's right. It's a very good question. I always thought of her as Irish somehow, but I think that's just her style of singing and her name. I don't know that that's a fact at all. But you will know her from all those TV commercials with the sad dogs. She sings that "The Arms of the Angel" song. And
Oh my God.
That's where you discovered her on commercials?
This is also one of my favorites.
Oh,
It's
God.
called Twisted Christmas. And it's a little change. It's a little irreverent, but
I'm not sure that qualifies as a
Okay.
carol.
Does it have Grandma Got Run Over by a Reindeer?
No, but it's that same spirit. I think the first song is the 12 Pains of Christmas, about all the things that are painful at Christmas. And then there's one called "The Restroom Dorset Gentleman," and so on.
Then you can't sing the real one.
There's something stuck up in the chimney, and we don't know what it is, but Santa hasn't come.
I think this discussion has disintegrated quickly.
It did. But I think that's another aspect of this discussion, that for many of us, I think we have certain recordings that, as Carol said, you go to CVS and you hear that particular recording, or you may play it at home, and that's when it's Christmas. We have this whole stack of Christmas CDs that are on the shelf stashed away somewhere, and then sometime in December, Greg decrees that they must all come out so we can go through them all.
Good for Greg.
Do the same thing, Greg. And part of that has to do with the Canadian brass playing all that very triumphal stuff.
Oh, I love
Sarah McLachlan is a Canadian. I'm just saying.
All right, just putting it out there. She's the.
But I do like going to church during Advent to escape it all. You know, when it's in CVS and you're so saturated with it during Advent, it feels really good to be able to go to church and know I'm not going to hear them till Christmas.
And sing "O Come Emmanuel."
Time and time again.
I don't know. I kind of miss Lord and Taylor's music during Christmas season. It starts before Thanksgiving. Well, it used to, because they're closed now, I think.
Yeah.
But it would start before Thanksgiving. It was all the Rudolph type of thing. Nothing, or or some crooner singing Silent Night, which other people like and I hate. So I don't want to hear a carol crooned.
I just,
I'm
that's,
too old for that, I think, or something.
that's another gig that's no longer there. When I was at the conservatory several times, you know, we would go and sing Christmas carols as a quartet at Lord and Taylor's and Saks Fifth Avenue and various places. So I'm sure that gig is all but dried up.
Oh, yeah. Probably.
Yeah, well, at least who knows? I haven't been to any of those places this year, but as of last year, they still would have occasional quartets. Now they all have these fanny packs. I don't know if you've seen them. So they all have little speakers. And you even, for the last several years, you've seen them in downtown crossing. So there'll be a quartet, and sometimes they're dressed up, and they usually have a little fanny pack with a personal speaker, so you can hear them over the traffic and all of that. Nothing is what it used to be.
No.
So there we are. Thank you all so much for joining me today for Talk About Music. And I want to wish you all a Merry, Merry Christmas. And then we will figure out what we're doing in the spring when everybody gets back from the holidays, sort of hoping that sooner or later we'll return either to live music or that we'll be starting to maybe post some recitals if we figure out how to do that. So stay tuned, as they say, and Merry Christmas, everyone.
So this will resume in January?
Well, that is the big question, but I will be sure to let you know.
Well, thanks for having these sessions.
I love it.
Great to have you all.
Thank you.
Merry Christmas, everyone.
Merry, Merry.
Merry Christmas.
God bless us, everyone.